When my mother-in-law told me to stop fighting for my marriage, I thought she was trying to protect me from more pain. I didn't know she was one of the reasons my marriage was falling apart. Looking back now, there were signs everywhere. Small signs, quiet signs. The kind you only understand after everything has already been broken. My name is Sarah Johnson. I am a 37-year-old Black American woman from Charlotte, North Carolina. For most of my life, I believed that if you loved your family, worked hard, and treated people with kindness, things would eventually work out. I was wrong. Or maybe I was only partly wrong. Because sometimes the people you trust the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. And sometimes the worst betrayal leads you to a better life than you ever imagined. But I didn't know that yet. At the time, I was sitting alone in my kitchen, staring at a text message that had changed everything. My hands were shaking. My heart felt heavy. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows. Inside, my whole world was falling apart. The message wasn't from my husband. It wasn't from a stranger. It was from a woman I had never met. And the moment I read her words, I realized my marriage was built on lies. The strange thing was that I wasn't thinking about my husband. I was thinking about my mother-in-law. Because suddenly, so many things started making sense. Things she had said, things she had done. The way she always defended him. The way she encouraged me to ignore my instincts. The way she seemed to know more than she should. That was the moment I realized I had been betrayed by two people instead of one. But before I tell you what happened, I need to tell you about my family. Because once upon a time, I truly believed we were happy. I met my husband, David Johnson, when I was 23 years old. He was charming from the very beginning. The kind of man who could walk into a room and make everyone laugh within 5 minutes. People loved being around him, including me. When we first started dating, he made me feel special. Seen, important. He remembered little things about me, my favorite songs, my favorite snacks, the books I loved reading. For years, I thought I had found my best friend. We got married 3 years later. Nothing fancy. Just a beautiful ceremony surrounded by family and friends. I remember standing there in my white dress, looking into his eyes and believing we would grow old together. At that moment, I meant every promise I made, and I believed he did too. A few years later, we welcomed our daughter Emma. 3 years after that, our son Ryan was born. Our house became louder, messier, busier, but it also became warmer, full of life. The kind of home I had always dreamed about creating. Most mornings started the same way, packing lunches, making breakfast, searching for missing shoes, helping with homework that should have been finished the night before. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. I worked part-time at a community library while David worked in sales. Money wasn't always easy, but we managed. We paid our bills. We took small family vacations. We celebrated birthdays around the kitchen table. Life felt ordinary. And honestly, ordinary felt wonderful. One person was always around during those years. My mother-in-law, Linda. At first, I considered myself lucky. Many women complain about their mothers-in-law. I never did. Linda seemed supportive. She brought gifts for the children. She called to check on us. She hosted family dinners almost every Sunday. Whenever people asked about her, I always smiled. She's been great to me, I would say, and I truly believed it. Linda often told me how much she appreciated everything I did for the family. She called me a wonderful mother, a wonderful wife, a blessing to her son. Hearing those words made me feel accepted, loved, part of the family. What I didn't realize was that some people know exactly what to say while hiding what they really think. Years passed peacefully, or at least they appeared peaceful. Our children grew older, David's career improved, life moved forward. And somewhere along the way, small things started changing. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just little things. David stayed later at work. He became more attached to his phone. He seemed distracted during conversations. Sometimes I would tell him a story about my day, and he would stare at the television instead of listening. Whenever I asked if something was wrong, he smiled. "Just tired," he would say. I wanted to believe him, so I did. After all, marriage requires trust, and I trusted my husband. I trusted my family. I trusted my mother-in-law. I had no idea that all three of those things were about to be tested. Because the text message that would expose every secret was already on its way, and when it finally arrived, nothing in my life would ever be the same again. Looking back now, I wish I had trusted my instincts sooner. The truth is, something inside me knew that things were changing. Not all at once, not in a dramatic way, just little pieces of our life shifting out of place. At first, I blamed stress. David had been working longer hours. His company was growing, and he often talked about new clients and bigger responsibilities. Whenever he came home late, I tried to be understanding. I would warm up his dinner and ask about his day. Most of the time, he gave short answers. Then he would disappear into his phone. That was new. David had never been secretive before. For years, his phone would sit on the kitchen counter without a second thought. Now it seemed glued to his hand. If a message arrived, he checked it immediately. If he left the room, the phone went with him. Even to places where nobody normally takes a phone. I noticed these things, but I kept finding excuses for them. Marriage teaches you to give people the benefit of the doubt. At least mine did. One evening, I was folding laundry while David sat across from me in the living room. The television was on, but neither of us was really watching it. His phone buzzed. A smile appeared on his face. Not a big smile, just a quick one, but it was there. Then he looked up and saw me watching. The smile disappeared instantly. "Who was that?" I asked casually. "Nobody," he said, just one word, nobody. For some reason, that answer stayed with me. Most people would say a coworker, a friend, a client. Nobody felt strange, almost rehearsed. I told myself I was overthinking, but the uncomfortable feeling remained. A few days later, Linda invited me to lunch. We met at a small restaurant we had visited many times before. Everything seemed normal at first. We talked about the children. We talked about family. We talked about everyday life. Then she asked a question that caught me completely off guard. "Have you ever thought about what makes a marriage last?" I laughed softly. "I guess love, trust, and patience." She nodded slowly, then she stirred her coffee. "Sometimes people stay together even when they're unhappy." Something about her tone felt unusual. I looked at her. "Are you talking about someone?" She smiled. "No. Just thinking out loud." But it didn't feel like she was thinking out loud. It felt like she was trying to tell me something without actually saying it. The conversation moved on, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. Why would she bring that up? And why did it feel so personal? The following weeks became even stranger. David started traveling more for work. At least that was what he told me. Sometimes he left for overnight business trips with very little notice. When I asked questions, he always had answers ready. Every detail sounded reasonable. Every explanation made sense, yet something felt wrong. One Friday evening, Emma asked a simple question during dinner. "Dad, why do you work so much now?" David laughed. "Because college isn't free." Emma smiled, but I noticed something. For a split second, David looked uncomfortable, as if the question had touched a nerve. The rest of dinner felt awkward. Nobody mentioned it again. Later that night, after the children were asleep, I sat alone in the kitchen. The house was quiet. The clock ticked softly on the wall. I remember staring at my coffee and wondering why I felt so uneasy. Nothing had happened, not really. I had no proof of anything, just a collection of small moments. Small changes, small doubts, yet my heart wouldn't settle. The next Sunday, we gathered at Linda's house for dinner. Everything seemed normal. The children played in the backyard. David watched football in the living room. Linda and I cleaned dishes in the kitchen. As we worked, she suddenly looked at me. "You should focus more on yourself," I laughed. "Mothers don't get much time for that." "Maybe they should." Her voice was gentle, but there was something underneath it, something I couldn't quite identify. Then she added words I would never forget. "A woman can't expect a man to stay interested forever if she forgets herself." I froze. The dish in my hand nearly slipped. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she smiled and continued washing dishes as if nothing had happened. The drive home felt unusually quiet. David stared out the window. I stared at the road. And for the first time in our marriage, I found myself wondering a question I never thought I would ask. What if the people I trusted most were hiding something from me? I didn't know it then. But the answer to that question was already waiting for me. And within days, one unexpected message would reveal a secret that neither David nor Linda ever wanted me to discover. 3 days after that dinner at Linda's house, my life changed forever. It was a rainy Thursday afternoon. The children were still at school. I was home alone, organizing books I had borrowed from the library. The house was quiet except for the sound of rain tapping against the windows. Then my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Normally, I would have ignored it. For some reason, I answered. "Hello." There was a brief pause, then a woman's voice spoke. "Is this Sarah Johnson?" "Yes." Another pause followed. She sounded nervous, almost afraid. "My name is Melissa. I think there's something you need to know." My stomach tightened immediately. I didn't understand why, but suddenly every nerve in my body felt alert. "What is this about?" I asked. The woman took a deep breath. "It's about your husband." For a moment, the room seemed completely silent. I couldn't hear the rain anymore. I couldn't hear anything, just her voice. Melissa explained that she had recently discovered her sister had been involved with a married man for nearly a year. That man was David. My husband, the father of my children, the man I had trusted for 14 years. At first, I couldn't believe it. The words didn't feel real. They felt like they belonged to someone else's life. Not mine, not our family. There had to be a mistake. There had to be. But then Melissa shared details. Specific details, places, dates, conversations, things no stranger could possibly know. My hands started shaking. I sat down because I felt too weak to stand. Tears filled my eyes, but strangely, I wasn't crying yet. I think I was still in shock. Then Melissa said something that made my heart stop. "There's one more thing." I gripped the phone tighter. "What?" "His mother knows." I felt a cold chill run through my entire body. "What did you say?" "His mother knows about the relationship." For several seconds, I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. All those strange conversations suddenly rushed back into my mind. The comments about marriage, the questions about happiness, the warnings about men getting bored, the suggestions that I focus more on myself. Every single one of them felt different now. They weren't innocent observations. They were clues, clues from someone who already knew the truth. When the call ended, I sat alone in my kitchen for almost an hour. I stared at the wall. I stared at the floor. I stared at nothing. The pain was overwhelming, but even worse than the affair was the betrayal. My mother-in-law had looked me in the eyes. She had shared meals with me. She had hugged me. She had watched me love her son and care for her grandchildren, all while knowing exactly what was happening. That evening, David came home around 6 o'clock. The moment he walked through the door, I knew. Not because of evidence. Not because of proof, because I finally stopped ignoring what my instincts had been telling me for months. He looked surprised when he saw me sitting quietly at the kitchen table. "Everything okay?" he asked. I looked directly into his eyes. "Who is she?" The color drained from his face instantly. That was all the answer I needed. He didn't ask what I meant. He didn't look confused. He didn't deny it right away. Instead, he froze. And in that moment, 14 years of trust disappeared. Finally, he sat down, his shoulders slumped, and he whispered words that shattered my heart. "I'm sorry." I closed my eyes. A part of me had still hoped Melissa was wrong. A part of me had still hoped there was some explanation, but there wasn't. There was only the truth, and the truth hurt. For nearly an hour, David admitted everything. The relationship had been going on for almost 10 months. It had started during a work conference. What began as friendship became something more, then something worse. As he spoke, I felt strangely calm, not because I wasn't hurting, because the pain had become too big for tears. Then I asked the question I feared most. Did Linda know? David lowered his head. The silence told me everything. Still, I needed to hear it. Did your mother know? Slowly, he nodded. Yes. The room felt colder than ever. How long? Almost from the beginning. I stared at him in disbelief. His mother had known for months. Months. She had listened to my concerns. She had watched me struggle. And instead of helping save our marriage, she had protected his secrets. That night, after the children were asleep, I sat alone in the darkness. My marriage was broken. My trust was broken. My heart was broken. But what neither David nor Linda realized was that their choices were about to create consequences neither of them expected. And those consequences would change all of our lives forever. The morning after David confessed, I woke up feeling like a different person. The house looked the same. The kitchen was the same. The family photos still hung on the walls, but everything felt different. The life I thought I had was gone. For years, I had built my world around my family. I had trusted my husband. I had trusted my mother-in-law. Now both of them had shown me that trust had been placed in the wrong hands. The hardest part was facing my children. Emma and Ryan were too young to understand everything, but they were old enough to notice that something was wrong. Children always know more than adults think. That morning, Emma looked at me carefully while eating breakfast. Mom, are you okay? I forced a small smile. I'm going to be okay, sweetheart. It wasn't a complete answer, but it was the only one I could give. Over the next few weeks, David moved into a small apartment across town. The separation happened quietly. There were no screaming matches, no dramatic scenes, just sadness, a deep sadness that seemed to settle over everything. David asked for forgiveness more than once. He said he had made a terrible mistake. He said he never wanted to hurt me, but those words couldn't erase what had happened. Every apology arrived too late. Every explanation felt empty. One afternoon, Linda came to my house unexpectedly. When I opened the door and saw her standing there, my stomach tightened. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she quietly said, "Can we talk?" I almost said no, but after everything that had happened, I wanted answers. We sat at the same kitchen table where we had shared countless conversations over the years, the same table where she had looked me in the eyes while hiding the truth. Linda looked older than I remembered, tired, nervous, guilty. Finally, she spoke. I never wanted things to end this way. I stared at her. Then why did you help him? Tears appeared in her eyes. He is my son. The answer shocked me, not because it was surprising, because it was so simple. She had chosen him over what was right. She had chosen loyalty over honesty. She had chosen silence over truth. I shook my head slowly. You didn't protect your son. She looked confused. Yes, I did. No, I replied quietly. You helped him destroy his family. Those words seemed to hit her harder than anything else. For the first time, she had no response. After that conversation, I stopped trying to understand her choices. Some questions don't have satisfying answers. Some betrayals simply happen. The divorce process moved forward. It wasn't easy. There were meetings, paperwork, difficult conversations, but through it all, I stayed focused on my children. They needed stability. They needed love. They needed at least one parent who wasn't falling apart. Slowly, I began rebuilding my life. I started exercising again. I spent more time with friends. I accepted extra hours at the library. Little by little, I began remembering who I was outside of being someone's wife. And then something unexpected happened. The relationship David had risked everything for started falling apart. At first, I only heard small pieces of information through mutual friends. Arguments, trust issues, constant tension. Eventually, I learned that the woman he had left our marriage for no longer believed him. The same dishonesty that damaged our family had entered his new relationship. The trust was gone before it ever had a chance to grow. A few months later, they separated, just like that. Everything David had sacrificed for disappeared. His marriage was gone. His new relationship was gone, and for the first time, he was completely alone. The consequences didn't stop there. Linda's relationship with her grandchildren also began to change. Emma especially struggled. She loved her grandmother deeply. But children notice betrayal too. One day, Emma quietly asked me a question. "Grandma knew." My heart broke. I never wanted my children carrying adult burdens, but I couldn't lie. I nodded gently. Emma looked down at the floor. "I don't understand why." Neither did I, and neither, it seemed, did Emma. For the first time in her life, Linda found herself facing the cost of her choices. The son she tried to protect was unhappy. The family she helped break apart no longer trusted her. And the grandchildren she adored were pulling away. But the biggest surprise was still coming. Because while David and Linda were living with regret, I was beginning to discover a strength I never knew I had. And that strength was about to change the ending of this story in a way none of us expected. About a year after my divorce, I found myself sitting on the front porch of my small townhouse on a quiet Sunday evening. The sun was beginning to set. A warm breeze moved through the trees. Emma and Ryan were laughing in the yard as they played with a basketball. For the first time in a very long time, I felt peaceful. Not happy because everything had worked out perfectly. Not happy because the pain had disappeared, but peaceful because I had survived it. There was a time when I thought the end of my marriage would destroy me. I truly believed I would never recover. I believed the betrayal would follow me forever. But healing has a strange way of arriving quietly. One small step at a time. One ordinary day at a time. You wake up one morning and realize the pain no longer controls every thought. You laugh without forcing it. You smile without pretending. And slowly, life begins again. That year taught me more about myself than any other period of my life. I learned that strength does not always look dramatic. Sometimes strength is simply getting out of bed, going to work, taking care of your children, continuing forward when your heart feels broken. I learned that I was stronger than I had ever imagined. And most importantly, I learned that my worth was never connected to someone else's choices. David's betrayal said something about him. It did not define me. A few months later, I received a phone call I wasn't expecting. It was David. We spoke occasionally because of the children, but our conversations were usually brief. This time, his voice sounded different, quieter, humbled. After discussing Emma and Ryan, there was a long silence. Then he spoke. "Sarah, I owe you another apology." I closed my eyes for a moment. I had heard apologies before, many of them, but this one felt different, not because it erased the past. Nothing could do that, but because it sounded honest. "I know," he continued, "that saying sorry doesn't fix anything. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand how much damage I caused." For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I answered honestly. "I appreciate that." And I did, not because I wanted him back, not because I needed closure, but because accountability matters. People should face the consequences of their choices, and sometimes the hardest consequence is understanding the pain you've caused. A few weeks after that conversation, something else happened. Linda asked to meet with me. At first, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go. The wounds she created had taken a long time to heal. But eventually, I agreed. We met at a small coffee shop near the library. When I arrived, she was already there. She looked older than I remembered. The confident woman who had once defended every decision her son made seemed gone. Instead, I saw someone carrying regret. For several moments, she simply stared into her coffee. Then tears filled her eyes. "I was wrong," she whispered. Those 3 words hung in the air between us. "I thought I was protecting my son," she continued. "But I wasn't. I was helping him make the worst mistake of his life." I listened quietly. For once, she wasn't making excuses. She wasn't blaming anyone else. She was accepting responsibility. "I lost your trust," she said. "And I hurt people I love." I nodded slowly. "Yes, you did." Tears rolled down her cheeks, and for the first time I truly believed she understood. Forgiveness is a complicated thing. Many people think forgiveness means forgetting. It doesn't. Some wounds leave permanent scars. Some memories never disappear. Forgiveness simply means refusing to carry bitterness forever. It means choosing peace over anger. That day, I forgave Linda. Not because she deserved it, not because the past changed, but because I deserved freedom from the weight of resentment. As I walked out of that coffee shop, I felt lighter. Not because justice had been served, not because everyone suddenly became happy, but because I finally understood something important. The people who betrayed me expected their choices to destroy my future. Instead, those choices forced me to build a stronger one. Today, my life looks different than I once imagined. It isn't perfect. No life is, but it is peaceful, it is honest, it is real. And every evening when I watch my children laugh, I am reminded of something powerful. Sometimes the people who break your heart accidentally help you find your strength. Sometimes the ending you never wanted becomes the beginning you needed. And sometimes the greatest victory isn't getting revenge. It's healing, moving forward, and creating a beautiful life anyway. That is the lesson this journey taught me. No matter who betrays you, never let their choices determine your worth. Because your value does not come from being loved by the wrong people. It comes from learning to love yourself enough to keep moving forward. And that is exactly what I did.